Hey guys, what's up? I'm Ashley and I'm here to talk to you about all things A Song of Ice and Fire. In today's video, I'm going to be discussing one of my favorite mysteries from the books, and that is the Pink Letter. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Pink Letter is a letter received by John from Ramsay just before he's set to lead the Hard Home Ranging. And this letter is important because it indirectly led to John's death. Had John not received this letter, he never would have made the decision to go to Winterfell to fight Ramsay as opposed to lead the Hard Home Ranging. And we know that decision in turn caused John's Night's Watch brothers to stab him to death. So it's a big deal. I'm intrigued to know if the intent of the author was to actually lure John to Winterfell. Was he never supposed to get to Winterfell? Was the letter a pretext for murder, or was it something else entirely? I don't know, but I'm certainly willing to explore it. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's jump in. You were right to come at once. You were right to be afraid. He cracked the seal, flattened the parchment, and read, "Your false king is dead, bastard. He and all his host were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore. Your false king's friends are dead, their heads upon the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard. Your false king lied, and so did you. You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. I will have my bride back. If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the north to see, proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I have made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell. I want my bride back. I want the false king's queen. I want his daughter and his red witch. I want his wildling princess. I want his little prince, the wildling babe. And I want my reek. Send them to me, bastard, and I will not trouble you or your black crows. Keep them from me, and I will cut out your bastard's heart and eat it. Ramsay Bolton, true-born lord of Winterfell." So, right away, we have to ask ourselves, could Ramsay have written this letter? Obviously, this is the world of Ice and Fire, so never say never. I think Ramsay is certainly crazy enough to have done this. This is the same man who murdered his older brother Domeric with poison so that their father would have no other heir to the Dreadfort but him. We are all quite familiar with the extensive torture Ramsay subjected Theon Greyjoy to, reducing him to eating rats, knocking out his teeth, cutting off 3 fingers and 4 toes, and most famously, cutting off Theon's penis. Now, we also know Ramsay likes to hunt women for sport. He will strip them naked, send them running into the forest with about half a day's start before he sets in on them with his dogs. Occasionally, one might make it out and live to tell the tale, but often not. And once caught, Ramsay will rape her, flay her, give her corpse to his dogs to eat, and then take her skin back to the Dreadfort to keep as a trophy. Ain't he lovely, folks? That being said, Ramsay can be merciful, and if a woman gives him a good hunt, then he will slit her throat before skinning her. If she gives him a bad hunt, well, you don't want to be one of those girls. Ramsay also had a wife before. Her name is Lady Donella Manderly, or Lady Hornwood. Remember that she's a Manderly. That will be important down the line. Ramsay seized her, forced her to marry him, then locked her away in a dungeon and forgot about her. So poor Lady Hornwood ended up dying of starvation, and her body was found with blood around her mouth and her fingers had been chewed off. You do the math about what happened there. So, in comparison to everything Ramsay's done previously, writing this letter would be cake. But is it really in Ramsay's best interests to invite John to Winterfell and write this letter? I don't think it is, and here's why. John is an older sibling to Arya, so he would have watched her grow up and be very familiar with her. And in my opinion, those two had the closest relationship of any of the Stark children. So there's no one better than John that could identify that the girl being passed off by the Boltons as Arya is not, in fact, Arya. John could, however, identify this girl as Jane Poole, Sansa Stark's best friend, because that's who she is. And presumably, having both grown up at Winterfell, Jane and John would have spent enough time around each other that John would know exactly who she is, what she looks like, who her parents were, and the Northmen would have no reason not to believe him. It's also worth noting that as far as the Northmen are concerned, John is the only remaining male heir of Ned Stark. And as such, I don't think it would be in Ramsay's best interests to lure him to Winterfell. Ned was very beloved and John was practically his twin, so it would seem to me that just the sight of John might stir some emotions in the Northmen and rally them to John's cause as opposed to continuing to support the Boltons. Now, Ramsay is certainly very impulsive and prone to outbursts of anger, so he could have written the letter during one of those outbursts, but what Ramsay really loves is his power, and he would have to recognize that inviting John to Winterfell would be a direct threat to that power because John would expose the Boltons as frauds, unite the other houses against them, and given that the peace that exists with the other houses and the Boltons is fragile, John's presence would likely shatter that peace and bring about the downfall of House Bolton. Something else that we have to touch on when considering if Ramsay wrote the pink letter is the penmanship. How does the penmanship of the pink letter compare to that of other known samples of Ramsay's handwriting? I consider this to be the single biggest indicator that Ramsay did not write the pink letter. On 2 other occasions, we know that Ramsay has written to both Jon Snow and Asha Greyjoy. In both of those instances, Jon and Asha note that Ramsay's letters are written in a large, spiky hand. And what's interesting about that is, at no point while reading the pink letter does Jon note that the letters are large and spiky. In fact, he doesn't say anything about the handwriting at all. So, that tells me that the person who wrote the pink letter and the person who wrote the previous 2 letters to Jon and Asha are not the same person. And it wouldn't make sense for Ramsay to be changing his handwriting every time he writes a letter. I could see that coming from someone like Varys, but not Ramsay. Speaking of things that don't make sense, yes, Jane and Theon escaped Winterfell. Yes, they ended up in the camp of Stannis Baratheon. However, according to Ramsay in this letter, he killed Stannis and Stannis' army was slaughtered in 7 days of battle. Now, if that were true, wouldn't you think that Ramsay would have Jane and Theon back and would have no need whatsoever to write a letter demanding their return? Lastly, I'd like to raise this point. The letter references details that Jon thinks are truths, but really they can't be because Ramsay would have no way to know these details. The first of which is that Stannis' sword is magic. The Boltons were never privy to any of Melisandre's shows presenting this sword to be Lightbringer, so why would Ramsay refer to it as being magic? The second detail is that Stannis burned Mance. We aren't told that Stannis sent out letters to other heads of houses informing them that he killed Mance, so how could Ramsay know that it had happened? Even if Stannis sent out letters, he wouldn't have sent one to the Boltons because the Boltons were the enemy. The third detail is the glamour trick. The letter says that Jon and Stannis lied about burning the king beyond the wall. This implies that Ramsay, or whoever wrote the letter, knows that the person who got burned wasn't Mance. And the only way for Jon and Stannis to have lied and successfully fooled the world is if they disguised the person who got burned to look like Mance. If you know how Ramsay would be privy to this information, leave a comment, because I don't know. Melisandre kept this plan so close to the vest that not even Stannis knows about it, and for the longest time neither did Jon. The fourth and fifth details are the existence of Val and the existence of Mance's son. There is absolutely no way that Ramsay could know about either of them unless Mance told him. The letter does say that Mance has been captured, but as of the end of A Dance with Dragons, that detail hasn't been confirmed, so we can't accept it as being true. Now, what we do know from Kevin Lannister's epilogue in A Dance with Dragons is that Stannis is still alive and that no battle has taken place between Stannis' army and the Boltons. So if the author lies about those details, how do you know he's not lying about the rest of it? Now let's play devil's advocate. If you want to assume that Mance was captured, I have a question. Why would Mance endanger his son and Val by telling Ramsay about them? Remember, Ramsay doesn't know that they exist, so it's not like he's going to be asking questions about them. If Mance offered up this information freely, that would be really careless of him, and if you know anything about Mance, you know that his priority has always been the well-being of his people. Putting targets on their backs does not fit with who he is as a person or as a leader, so I do not see under any circumstance that Mance would give up these details. In conclusion, we know beyond a doubt that Ramsay Bolton is a bona fide sociopath who will go to extreme lengths to exert his dominance over others. However, I find it highly unlikely that Ramsay wrote the pink letter. He had too much to lose by bringing John to Winterfell. So the question is, if Ramsay had everything to lose by inviting John to Winterfell and therefore would not have written this letter, who stands to gain from John's presence at Winterfell? I will be answering that question in my upcoming videos in this Who Done It series, so be on the lookout, like, and subscribe if you'd like to learn more. 7 blessings, friends.